Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the North East Non-League Show, episode 42, which is our August review of the Northern League Division 1 and Division 2, sponsored by Jade Bell and Facebook sponsor DJ Private Hire. Join us now, we have Dan Bell of DB3 Sports TV. Dan, thank you very much for coming back on the show tonight.
Pleasure as always.
Excellent. And tonight we're going to be looking at Division 1 and 2 and how August has gone so far for teams. Some good, some bad, some in between. Lots to chat about. So we're going to get on to Division 1, starting off obviously with the top 6 teams who's up there at the start of the season, which first of all is Bishop Borton. Played 6, won 4, drawn 2, scored 19 goals. Couple of draws to start versus Crookston, but after that they just seem to have kicked on in some massive standout games. A 7-1 against Benfield, 5-1 against Whitley Bay. 2 FA Cup wins, but when you've got the likes of Fexton and Johnson on the side, it's goals guaranteed. I mean, do you think they'll still be up there and around come the end of the season, or do you think they'll slip away or have a little blip?
I reckon they'll win the league this year. I saw them at Gisborough last Wednesday night, and they'll admit themselves that it maybe wasn't a vintage performance. Like, you look at some of their other results so far, I think they put 5 past Whitley Bay. I think they put 7 past Seaham in the FA Cup. I think they put 7 past Benfield as well. So they've dished out some hammerings to sides that are no mugs. But that night at Gisborough, they weren't brilliant, and they could so easily have been held for a point. But despite obviously a pretty tight battle, they managed to find a way to grind something out. And I think that's what sort of makes champions, if you get what I mean. And when you're maybe not quite at your best, but you still manage to grind something out. I mean, obviously they will get beaten at some point. I mean, it's totally unrealistic to think that they're going to go the whole season unbeaten or whatever. But yeah, like the signs are most definitely there, even at this very early stage for Bishops. And in my honest opinion, I really do think they're going to take some stopping this year.
Yeah, sometimes them scrappy 1-0 wins, last minute wins are more important than the 5, 6, 7 ones that can grind out results. Totally agree with that as well. And getting on to second place, which is Berkeley. Only played 4 but won 4, scored 14 and conceded 3, and it just shows kind of how solid they are and build on from last season. Not too many changes. Like you say, first game against Redcliffe, who was quite big favourites going to League 4-1, really pushed on for them as well. But like you say, the management there, the team that they've got, they're kind of sticking together. And it could be one of those like Newton Aycliffe last season where they stick together and you never know what could happen with them, couldn't it?
I've got to say, I've been really, really impressed with Berkeley so far and their overall approach to it. I just think they've just gone into absolutely every game they've played so far with no fear. I think they've came into this league sort of knowing that they were maybe going to be underdogs. Of course, I went to that game at Redcliffe Athletic on the opening day of the season. I think most people that went to that game, I thought, were probably thinking, Berkeley will probably give them a decent game. But I think, obviously, given that on paper the signings that Redcliffe Athletic had made, I'm sure we'll obviously get on to Redcliffe Athletic in a bit. So obviously a pretty big discussion point in Division 1 at the minute. But from what I saw from Berkeley, like they just went for it, and I think they're 3-0 up in 15 minutes or something like that. Just totally took Redcliffe Athletic by surprise. And the thing is as well with Berkeley, there was all these questions in the summer about how were they going to replace 63 goals from Rutledge, and I mean, yeah, that was always going to be a tough thing for them to do, because I think you've obviously got a very, very talented player there, and I think it is only a matter of time before he does start finding himself on the score sheet for Gateshead, based on obviously his recent performances and that. But I think what you're finding is they've got some very talented players all over the pitch, some grafters, and I think they could be in a situation again next summer where you're getting clubs at a high level that are looking at their players like to carry on like they are. I mean, I think even at this early stage, I'd go as far as to say any talk of them getting relegated has been pretty much blown out the water now. I mean, will they maintain this kind of position like for the duration of the season? That only time will tell. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what happens when they do maybe hit a little bit of a rough patch of form. But if you're a Berkeley fan or involved with Berkeley in any way, like you can't really ask for any more than what they're giving so far. And like as I say, I'm a massive admirer of how they're going about it.
Yeah, doing very well. I think it was a pre-season friendly against Ashton where a few people just said they turned up and they didn't treat it as a friendly. It was almost like an actual league game. Went full throttle. I think if you take that in the pre-season, they're going to have a great chance of being up there come the end of the season. A massive shout out as well to Jack Bonner, obviously retired just last week. A Berkeley legend down there as well. Be a huge miss at the club. On to Whitley Bay next, who's sitting third. Played 6, won 4 and lost 2. But again, it's kind of carried on from last season, just these random results where they'll have a good win and then all of a sudden they'll go and get beat 6-0 off West Allotment, 5-1 Bishop Bortland. And it's almost the blueprint the same as last season, but I know that obviously they got the experience there of Turnbull, the likes of Phillips, and you were hoping with them players in there, them results wouldn't kind of creep in a game, but you're starting to see in there could cost coming in the season again, couldn't they?
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I think like the league is just going to be that open this year, and I think goal difference will be important come the end. And I think with Whitley Bay is, as you said, just the manner of the defeats that they're getting. Like, I think they conceded 6 against West Allotment, was it? Or conceded 5 against Bishops and 3 against Wickham in the FA Cup. So maybe like they need to have a look at the defensive side of things, but long the table doesn't lie, and they have got the necessary results to be up there. I mean, granted, at the minute, I think the table is a little bit all over the place because some teams have played quite a few more games than others. Obviously, some teams are currently on FA Cup runs. There's been, even at this early stage, like a few games off for the weather and things like that. So it's maybe a bit tricky to sort of kind of assess where teams are on the table versus where you maybe think they should be. But yeah, I think there is the strength in there from Whitley Bay, like to like potentially be up there in and around the playoffs come the end of the season. But as I say, like I mean, if they were only getting beat like 1-0 or 2-1 or something like that, you'd maybe think, oh, fair enough, these things happen. But yeah, I just think like I just think like you cannot go about like getting beat by those kind of score lines on
just the mentality, isn't it?
Because if that's happening, then you've got absolutely no chance. If say for argument's sake, they're in the playoff semi-final or the final, whatever, and they go 1-0 down early on, what happens then? Do they stick with it, or do the heads drop? Like, so it really is something they've got to address now. Otherwise, it could really bite them later down the line.
No, 100%. New to the league, back dropping down at Shildon. Played 5, won 3, drawn 2. Obviously unbeaten at the moment, back in the Northern League. And they're just going about the job, really. Adeline and Postal obviously getting the goals, great start. And do you think that run will continue with Shildon?
Yeah, I definitely think Shildon will be up there. I mean, going into the season, I wasn't too sure because obviously, like unlike North Shields, like they'd been probably relegated through sporting merit. I mean, I know there was whispers that they maybe weren't happy in the league above and they wanted to come back down to the Northern League. But so far, I think they've settled back in fairly well. I had them watched West Auckland in the league again, that is. I know they played each other in the FA Cup as well. But they looked fairly solid that night, as did West Auckland. And I think like what we saw in that game was two sides that are going to be difficult to beat, which I think obviously can take you a long way. Like I think if you're having games where it's maybe just not happening for you in front of goal, but if you maybe sort of doing the right things at the back and frustrating the opposition and just I just think they're going to be one of those that they'll obviously give a few teams some hammerings. I mean, I've got the players to do that, but I think as well, like they might have quite a lot of like maybe scrappy 1-0s, 2-1s, 3-2s or something like that to the name as well.
Definitely. And next to the other side that's pushing on up the top, like Berkeley trying to stay up there now, Newcastle Benfield, sitting 5th, played 6, won 3, drawn 1, lost 2, and it's going well for Paul Brace. Like you say, the experience that the lad's got in the Northern League, he's got to have contacts, and like you say, the first game of the season beat RCA 7-0, and even though first game of the season, a massive win, that confidence that can push on for the lads. could be great as well. I mean, wins against Penrith, Towler, and just keeps them, like you say, taken away. And I know Paul will be over the moon. I know we had the chairman on, obviously, last season, kind of wanting to push on now. And it's nice to see other teams trying to break it and kind of mix it up at the top now, isn't it?
Yeah, though when they announced that it was going to be the champions go up automatically, then the next four going to playoffs, I did think like straight away it would make for a very open league. And look, there's always a team that comes almost out of nowhere in both Division 1 and Division 2 for that matter every single year. I mean, Benfield, they've been the sort of team that probably been in and around mid-table for sort of quite a while. I've never really felt that they've ever been and had real relegation fears. But at the same time, like there's always just been that sort of number of teams that have just had that little bit more than them over the course of the season. I mean, I think that will be the case this year, and I don't think they will finish in the playoffs, but I don't see any reason at all why they can't go on and have a season that's fairly solid for them.
Yeah, definitely. And finish with sixth place at Wickham, which I'm over the moon for Holiday, and I know he's been on the show before at Wickham. Great lads, and played 5-1, 3, draw 1, lost 1. In close games as well, but a great 2-0 win against North Shields, Robson and Monroe. And like you say, I think with even when he's on the show, you can see the passion, the hunger that he's got in management. And I think that's going to help Wickham massively and the players that they've got there to hopefully, like you say, push on and hopefully get them playoff spots, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they finished last season strong as well, didn't they? And obviously, as well with Wickham this year, like, there's going to be a lot of attention on them for the rest of this week. Obviously, bearing in mind the calibre of FA Cup tie that they've got this coming Sunday, which is absolutely great for them. Like, you think there's going to be probably best part 1,000 people or something like that, or maybe 500 the absolute worst at the Glebe on Sunday, which is going to be an absolutely phenomenal turnout for them. It's going to be the valuable money into the coffers, and I think they strike me a little bit as a team that could be dark horses for the playoffs. I remember a few years ago, like, had a pretty sizable recruitment drive, and that season, I think, well, it was eventually stopped by COVID, but I think up until then it was let's just say it just was not going well for them at all. But I think they've learned from that, and I think like a lot of the recruitment now is fairly wise. I think they're being run the right way, and look, I think they're one of those that they could sneak into the playoffs, but then again they might not. But you might see them maybe go on a cup run or something like that, or it might. Well, you could say they already have in the FA Cup, but then again, they might have a decent run in the Vars or the League Cup or the Durham Challenge Cup or something like that. So I think it is positive times overall at Wickham.
No, really good. And getting on to kind of the mid-table, which is already starting now as a battle from that 6th place down to 14th, as I expect that. And like you say, only some teams played 3 games, 4 games, up to 6 games, and it's kind of a 6-point swing. And I don't expect that to change very much throughout the season. I think, as you mentioned there, a lot of teams will be beating each other around the area, come out throughout the season as well. But a couple of sides who struggled last year, great stars to see in Red Star, Carlisle FC as well. Like I say, both sides struggle. I think it's important when they have last year's to get that good start, which they have as well. And you look at Seam in a kind of like a good start, and I know the game was off last Friday, but it's nice to see some of them teams that were struggling pushing on a little bit now, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I saw Seam a couple of weeks ago against Penrith. And one of the guys was telling us there that they've got I think their average age of their squad's 22, 23, something like that. So it's a young developing squad.
Yeah, senior players.
Yeah. And again, I've got the likes of Bernicle that can help those younger players. And look, I was actually pretty impressed with what I saw from Seam in that game. I thought they played, some really nice football. It was attacking football. They were getting plenty of chances away. So yeah, I've got to say, like, Seam, have been for me one of the surprise packages in the league so far. Took a point off of Bishop Auckland, which is, as we just discussed, is going to be something that's going to be pretty difficult for anyone to do this year. But yeah, I mean, I certainly can't envisage them being any real relegation worries this year. I mean, they might slip down the table. I mean, as we said, it's a young squad that they are learning. They are going to make mistakes. I might have a couple of bad defeats here and there, but so far, a really positive start, which I'm sure everyone at CM will be pretty happy with.
Yeah, and I could imagine as well if this form does keep up, it's going to be quite tricky for the people that's running there to kind of say, right, the manager's banned, the coach that's came and he's doing well. You've got to kind of think about them things as well. If they keep the form up, changes could be made, couldn't it? Really?
Yeah, that's the thing. If obviously, as I said, the young players, they are shining at the minute, but then again, unfortunately, even at non-league level, money just about is everything in football.
Yeah.
These days, and no disrespect to see them as a club, but there are bigger clubs within the Northern League and within the NPL, etc. So, and if obviously these young lads are still playing to the levels they are and playing this nice football, then surely it is only a matter of time before some of these clubs do start taking a bit of an interest in these players.
No, definitely. And in the mix as well, you've got the likes, obviously, North Shields, West of Lachlan, West Auckland, Heaton, Gisborough. Like I say, it's going to be a cracking battle. And I mean, Crook's sitting in there as well, obviously drawn 4 the last 5, and they're looking really strong where they're going to push on as well. It's going to be between them teams that we just mentioned there. I know, obviously, like North Shields, Heaton will be looking to push on as well, but it's going to be a good battle in that mid-table, isn't it? There's going to be some cracking games to be played.
Yeah, and I think there's a batch of teams in there that could well be sort of pushing on for the playoffs come the end of the season. I think there's pretty high expectations of Heaton going into this season. I think they've had a pretty mixed start. It's safe to say. I think lost their opening game to Wickham, didn't they? But I know they obviously beat Redcar. I think they're in the middle of cup runs as well. Same with Gisborough to a degree. I went to watch Gisborough last night. I think the problem with Gisborough is they just cannot start a game of football to save their lives. Just seems every time I go to watch them, they'll start slowly. They'll try and soak up pressure from opposition, and they regularly find themselves a goal down in like the first 10, 15 minutes of a game, and just sometimes maybe leave themselves with a little bit too much to do, which could be their undoing in the race for the playoffs. But look, there is good players in that team. I think at the minute, Eddie Thomas is on loan from Mask, and if they can get that loan extended, that could make a huge difference for them. I've been quite impressed with Cole Keenan so far. So, I think that's another one that could be potentially a bit of a dark horse. And, of course, North Shields. Some might say they're underperforming so far. Obviously, lost both of the last 2 games. But look, there's a long, long way to go yet. And I think we might have another show, another podcast like this in like March, April time, and the teams we're discussing now, like some of them could be struggling down the bottom end, some of them could be could push up the table even further. Like we just do not know yet. But I think, as I say, there's a lot of teams in there in that sort of batch that have had fixtures affected by the FA Cup and what have you. Like obviously, Gisborough have had a pretty memorable run, pulling off 2 pretty unbelievable results in the same week against higher opposition away from home. Heaton as well, still going in the FA Cup, and with a pretty good chance, I'd say, of going even further at the weekend. There's a long way to go, and there's obviously, I think, there's always going to be one team that's going into back end of the season that have got 5 or 6 games to catch up on Sunday. I think a lot of it might just come down to how well whichever teams are in that situation handle it.
100%. And looking a bit further down now, like you said, it's very early days, and as you say, in a couple of weeks' time, it could completely change. But looking down there at the moment, and I think to pick out 2 sides straight away for myself personally, which is Borough Rangers sitting 17th and Redcar Athletic were at 18th, only played a couple of games. 2 good sides that we expect over the next kind of month or so to start climbing league once they kind of get things settled. I know some big players coming at Redcar, and like you say, you expect them to kind of push on now, don't you?
Yeah, I think with Borough Rangers, it's a bit of a strange one because, of course, they've not played a home game yet, and I don't think they can until the end of September. Obviously, they're getting the new ground sorted, which is in Middlesbrough, which could be something that like could really help them grow as a football club, like being back in the borough itself. Like I know, obviously, last year I sort of been playing in Stoke, so it's still quite a bit of a way out of Middlesbrough, and obviously before that playing at New Ferrens Park. So it's maybe been tricky for them to establish an identity, I'd say. But I thought, they were deserved champions of Division 2 last season. I do think maybe to a degree they're in a false position at the minute. I think that's purely down to the lack of games that they've had so far. And as for Redcar Athletic, what I've got to say is I think like that obviously brought in these players that have sort of been there and done that at high levels and what have you. But I think what they're getting wrong so far is like they're trying to sort of promote themselves as sort of being this like great place to watch football like Green Lane. I think statistically I saw more goals than any other Northern League Division 1 ground last year. But part of the problem with that is the defending is pretty non-existent. Like, it was terrible on the opening day against Berkeley, to be quite honest. And you look at their FA Vars game at the weekend. Yes, they obviously scored 6, but I was chatting to a couple of lads from Redcar Athletic last night, and they said, yeah, they obviously scored 6, but what we need to look at is the 3 that they let in. Obviously, winning. With all due respect, a team you'd expect them to be beaten pretty comfortably. And you'd think if that's what it's like in an FA Vars tie against a side that are probably going to be struggling at the bottom end of Division 2, if we're totally honest. And what's it going to be like if they come up against half decent opposition? So there's they've got a lot of work to do. And I mean, they're already playing catch up, and even at this early stage, I'd go as far as to say like they've got quite a few must-win games coming up, or at least must-not-lose games. Otherwise, a team that you thought would be right up there in the top 5 could well be struggling at the wrong end of the table, and that is really where they're at the minute.
Yeah, there's always one team like that, isn't there? I mean, looking at the other teams that's in and around that, and I know it's early days, but it's worrying again to see the likes of Penrith, Northampton, RCA, and Tower kind of down there. I mean, you look at RCA, I think must have brought at least 20 plus players, and you're bringing that amount of players in, you kind of, it's going to be at least a good couple of months, even with pre-season, to get a gel team together. I know they brought in a few more players again last week as well. Just it's not going to help. And I know Tower massive change over the summer as well, but it's already early days, but it's starting to worry for them 4 sides already, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm part of the Northallerton Song group on Facebook, actually, and there seems to be a lot of unrest there about the fact that obviously not won a game. And you've got to remember, I think more was probably expected of Northallerton this year, given the recruitment that they'd made. I mean, a bit like Redcar Athletic, probably to a lesser extent. But I don't think they've properly won a game yet. I mean, I know they beat Chester Street Town in the FA Vars, but that was obviously by virtue of penalties. And I think at home, they possibly would have expected a little bit more from them. I mean, I do think they'll be okay. Like they always do seem to find a way. Like they often seem to find a way towards the end. Like they're pretty notorious bad starters, but it's really not. But at the minute, it's really not looking good for them. I mean, I like Northampton, I really do, and I hope they can push on up the table. I mean, as for Penrith, again, a bit like Borough Rangers, it's been a bit of a strange start because they've not been able to play any home games of yet. And I think once Frenchfield is ready, and I think because they've played so many away games already, I think back end of the season, like the majority of the games are going to be at home. So that could prove something that is a bit of an advantage for them later down the line. Like you think if they're playing home games on a Wednesday night, something like that, like for teams
it's not nice travel
from the northeast, like sometimes they can't get the players together because of work commitments or whatever. So, I think, so yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting relegation battle. I'm sure. I mean, at this minute, it's pretty tough to say who's going to be in. I think RCA and Towelaw most definitely both made pretty terrible starts. I mean, RCA weren't a disaster last night. I think obviously they got the early goal, but then just got dominated for the rest of the first half, and then start the second half they showed something. Even after they went 2-1 down, they showed something as well. So, but I just think, yeah, I think if you're showing something, but there's no like end product or whatever, and it really doesn't bode well. So unfortunately, I probably can see RCA getting relegated this year.
No, 100%. But no, that's our Division 1 roundup so far. It's like I said, some great just be chatting about the Northern League again. I know we missed it so much over the summer. It's nice to see and get back out the games as well. Before we get on to Division 2, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and get across the Dan's channel as well. Absolutely smashing up at the minute. I love watching the videos on there as well. And any comments about Division 1, Division 2, players, teams, managers, get them in as well as we go on throughout the show. We're going to get to Division 2 next and up the top, which is starting to look great already. Sitting at the top of the league, Blythe first, 24 points, played 9, won 8 and only lost 1, so just this week. Great start, goals, clean sheets, like you say, already I think they've got 3 in the top 9 goal scorers already, with Slater on 9, Johnson 5, Wilson 5, and obviously the experience of Robbie Dale playing as well, and the fighting for the title. You've got second place Horden, after a 2-0 win 2-0 win last night, played 10, won 7, drawn 2, lost 1, sitting on 23 points. And as we chatted on the last show, kept most of their squad last season and added quality onto that, like the likes of Pounder with the goals, which is starting to show already this season, already smashing up in that league. And third at the moment, Newcastle Blue Star, unbeaten after 8 games, won 7 and drawn 1, sitting on 22 points. And again, some good players there. But like you say, I think every time they've got a home game, it's almost like an FA Cup final for other teams that's going up to play against them. What's your thoughts on that top 3 at the moment, Dan?
I don't think there's much surprise to it, I must say. Obviously, Horden were right in the title race with Borough Rangers, and it took a Borough Rangers versus Horden game on the last day of the season to decide the title. And obviously, things happened, which meant that they weren't allowed to use the welfare ground in the playoffs, which I think had a bit more of an effect on them than I think people realised. But I think there's obviously more settled there this year. They've got the new stand installed, and I think they're maybe trying to get themselves Division 1 ready. I mean, it's going to be a tough battle for them. Obviously, Blythe Town have started pretty exceptionally well. I think with Blythe Town, the signs, we could probably say the signs were there in pre-season. I think the 4-0 win against Blythe Spartans, who I believe had quite a few of the regular first teamers out, didn't they? I think like Blythe Town are going to be strong this year. And then you've got Blue Star as well, obviously new to the division. So it's a really, I think that's going to be a really interesting title race this year. I think both leagues are just incredibly open now, and I think the problem is, though, I think the teams that you're expecting to be at the top of both divisions are sort of quite a way ahead of the rest of the leagues. I think the teams at the top end of Division 2 probably could go into Division 1 with the current squads and hold their own. It's going to be an interesting one. I mean, I think it will come down to either Blythe Town or Blue Star come the end, and I think maybe get Horden in third place.
Yeah. Another team I was going to mention in the pack there, but I just want to give them all a little slot, which was Chelsea Street Town, sitting fourth at the minute on 20 points, played 9, won 6, drawn 2, and lost 1. And like you say, I'm buzzing for the lads, Barry and Stewart. I mean, I was just talking to Stewart today, and like you say, the amount of effort that they've put into the club just coming in last season, what they did towards the end of last season, building over the summer, and it's just proved the point now that how much the club's pushing on. And it's great to see a team like Chester Street Town obviously pushing on. Hopefully, you never know, getting them playoffs. You never know, maybe get back in Division 1. And it's nice to see players wanting to obviously play for Bowie and Stewart too. Great lads of the Northern East scene as well. It's nice to see them up there, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely is. And I think with Chesley Street Town, I've maybe been the sort of club that will maybe go quietly about the business. I think
Yeah.
going into the new season, almost nobody had them sort of been up there on top. I mean, maybe there'll be people at the club that will disagree with that, like, because I'm sure they probably always had that belief.
Yeah.
But I think from sort of general outsiders, I think all the noise over the summer was about Blue Star, about Blythe Town, about Horton, and maybe even about Billinghamstown. I'm sure we'll get onto them a bit and their struggles so far this season. But yeah, I think with Chester, I think there was a bit of a spell a few years ago where it was looking as though they were going to knock on the
Yeah, it
door
was,
of
wasn't it?
Division One. I think they won the Ernest Armstrong Memorial Cup. I think they had a few seasons where they were maybe challenging at the top end, but I think just fell short. I think they're up there with Northallerton one year, but I think Northallerton and a couple of other teams, can't remember who, but I think obviously they got pipped to the post those times. And I think going into that season, it was eventually halted by COVID. I really did fancy them, and I think I went to the first home game of the season. They beat Washington by 3-1, and thought, yeah, I think my prediction of them winning the league is pretty justified. But I think as that season went on, like, they started to fall away a little bit, like they lost a bit of form for one reason or the other. But yeah, I think as far as this year goes, I think that they're definite dark horse. And look, they've always been the sort of team that like you maybe not think a great deal of, but then all of a sudden
Yeah.
they pull off a 3-0 win against a team that's going to be up there, or a team or another team that's going to be up there will go to Chester and get turned over. So like, can they keep this up? Only time will tell, but the signs are most definitely promising for them, for sure.
Yeah, it's like you say, a massive game tomorrow night. Blue Star home. I'm expecting a massive crowd. I know I was hoping to head down tomorrow night, but the Bairns got a first football training session now, so it's put a halt to that one. But I hope it's a great crowd down there for the club tomorrow night and get plenty through the gates as well. And a stat what I absolutely love today is the top four, which is Blythe, Horden, Newcastle Blue Star, and Chester Street Town. The games that they've played so far in the league, they've scored 100 goals between them, which is, I think, it's an absolutely great stat so far, very early in the season as well. And getting onto the pack behind them at the moment, you've got Bolden, who's sitting in fifth, and obviously Levi Collins, goal machine there. Sixth, Benetton, expect to be around there, if not a little bit higher. And seventh place at the moment, Easton Colliery, which a manager I really have a lot of respect for, Hodgkiss. I think he'll do really well, obviously pushing forward as well. And the lads that got their great start as well. And it's kind of them teams that you expect in and around the area, and hopefully, like you say, little spells trying to get in that final playoff spot or pushing even further, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing, as I say, it is still very, very early days. I'm not sure. I mean, if I'm totally honest, I probably naturally follow Division One a bit more than I do Division
Yeah.
Two. Living in Gisborne and things like that is just sort of the league I'd probably do more naturally keep an eye on. But yeah, I think Bedlington, I think they've had a couple of impressive results so far, haven't they? And Bolden as well. I think like they obviously got in the playoffs in the first season, but then obviously things didn't go their way in the playoffs themselves, and last season slipped down the table a little bit. But they'll be looking to. I think they'll obviously be looking to make that push back in again. I think like the beauty of the area Bolden are in, like they've got like the opportunity to maybe get young, promising players in on loan, like from likes of Shields, Gateshead, Hebben. So yeah, like they could be again maybe a little bit of a dark horse come the end of the season.
Definitely. You've got Air sitting in 8th place, Prudder, 9th place, Jarrah, 10 for Yarm, 11, Billiamson, Thonia. And I know I've watched Jarrah down at the hub against West End a couple of weeks ago. And I mean, West Ham was dominating the first half, a lot of chances, but the second half they came out. I know they had a good start of the season, and I've had a couple of defeats lately in the league, but they're playing some really good football. Nick, the 2-1 win down at West End, the game that we watched down there as well. But it's nice to see some of the sides like Prudder pushing on as well. Yarm new to the league in there. And then obviously just a little bit further behind that, 12th down to 16th, you've got Newcastle Uni that's sitting in 12th, Town, which is in 13th, and finally in 14th, FC Hartlepool. Obviously only played 5 but unbeaten at the moment, and that would be nice to keep an eye on them. Obviously new to the league, but you'll always see one of those sides, a strong side that comes into the league. It'll be interesting to see how they got on this season, won't it?
Yeah, and you look at the track record over the last few years, like teams coming out of the Alliance, the Wayside League, and the North Riding League have sort of generally come into the league and at least held their own. I know obviously some have pushed on and gone further. Like, I think the likes of Stockton Town a few years ago, Borough Rangers went straight from the North Riding into the into Division 2 and won that as well. And it looks as though obviously Blue Star are going to be strong again. But I think FC Hartlepool, I can't envisage any issues for them. I don't think there's a great deal of difference between the Wearside League and maybe the lower end of Northern League Division 2 at the minute. And I think maybe could sort of ring true for Yarmouth Eagles Cliff. Like, I know they had a little bit of a sticky start. I think they had lost quite a few games to begin with, like maybe a couple of heavy defeats. But I always sort of felt that eventually, like, it would click for them, and they wouldn't have any sort of real worries with relegation, what have you. Because again, they'd always been a pretty strong team in terms of the North Riding League. I mean, obviously last year I think they finished second to Redcar Newmarket slash Darlington United. Obviously a team that like obviously have got players that could comfortably do a job in Northern League Division 1, but obviously can't go up because they don't have the facilities. But obviously Yarmouth Eagles Cliff, they took a bit of a different way, didn't they? Like playing the home games at Billingham Town, and don't hold that against. I mean, there are some people like maybe a little bit funny about the way they've done it, but good luck to them, I say. And the thing,
good win as well against Blythe, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's a really certainly set the cat among the pigeons, that one. I think as well for FC Hartlepool. Again, like they've come up but they've obviously stayed at their own ground. I think they've had a bit of a sticky time and been able to get home games on. Like I think, as I've touched upon with Borough Rangers and Penrith, I think that's all to do with floodlights. I know they had a lot of home weekends initially scheduled, but couldn't play any of them because of because of the lights. So I'm sure once obviously the lights are ready and they're playing midweek games, I will get down to watch them at some point. There's definitely a team I definitely would like to watch to see how they're settling in.
Yeah, definitely. Number 2 teams in a row there, right in 15th and 4 to be 16th as well. Like I say, I'm looking forward to a lot of these teams coming down the hub and getting down to as many games as I can down there. Like I say, the first one I've seen so far is obviously the Jarrow game, which was a really good game down there. Next on to kind of the bottom half again, the 17th down to 22nd. And again, as we mentioned on Division 1, you can see the team struggling already. You look at the so far 17 Brandon 1-2. I know the big Jarrett 2-1 yesterday, which was a bit of a shock result. And like you say, I think it's been a funny one. I know I've been looking at work today, the social media, kind of the manager interviewing himself after games and stuff like that. And a lot of fans liking it, a lot of fans laughing at it, a lot of fans against it. A bit of a strange time down there at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, I think with Brandon, I think they've been strugglers for a few years, safe to say. I think maybe a team that might have the occasional stint up into mid-table, but generally speaking, like they have been a team that have maybe been in around those positions. I wouldn't say, you can't really call it the relegation zone in Division 2, can you? It's more teams that are liable to relegation. It's just sort of done on points per game compared to the rest of the country, compared to other leagues at the same level in the rest of the country. But I mean, I've not watched Brandon in quite a long time actually, and I think I need to change that at some point this season. I'll try to get around as many Northern League grounds as I can. It's not possible for me to get around absolutely all of them. I see absolutely every team, but I do try, and I would like to get to Brandon at some point. I do like. I mean, I've got a bit of story about Brandon actually. one time I went there, they were only able to print off 15 programs, and it's like with some ground hoppers, like someone will just show up, then they'll just buy them all so they can flog them. But obviously, I explained what happened to us, and they apologised for that, and just said, look, just give us your address, just give us maybe a couple of quid more for the postage, and we'll send you on. And I've always had a little bit of a soft spot for them since then. So the sort of team I would quite like to see do well, but I think realistically speaking, they are sort of always going to be the sort of team that are going to be maybe loitering at the wrong end of the table.
Yeah, it's such a shame because I know obviously we've had Matty on a few times, now Cook manager, and I know I watched Brandon last season down at the Hub after beating West End. I want to say 4-5-1, absolutely dominated the game, and you can even hear him chatting to the kind of the board after that. I think they were sitting at the time maybe between fifth and eighth and looking very good for the playoffs, and he's kind of saying, right, we're up here now, this is what we want to do and push on Division 1. And you could see what he wanted to do for the club, but the club didn't want to go to that level, if that makes sense. And because they've always been in and around the bottom half of Division 2, I think they got a kind of a shock of where they were last season under Matty before he left for Crook. And I know he wasn't very kind of happy with where they wanted to go with where he wanted to go as well. So that was kind of interesting with that. I don't know if it's like you say, the budgets or what they can play players, or moving up a division might not be good enough for Brandon at the minute. But that was really interesting with Matty discussing that one as well. And a bit further down in the table, 18th, we have West End, which is just one game at the moment. Obviously beat Wrighton 2-1, but then now 4 losses in a row. 5-2 lost to Billingham Town. Billingham Symphonia on Tuesday night. I know, looking on a few forums, said defence was very open down there. But yeah, it's very, very hard start for them. And next on 19th is Billingham Town, which again won one game, and massive change, obviously, which you had to do over the summer. Obviously, everyone leaving the club, bringing in a totally new side. But I think the managers, who I know well, will be very disappointed about being 1-0 up against Pruitt and losing 4-1. It's a very tough times at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, the one game that Billingham Town have won was the game I was actually at, which was against.
You have to go back some more.
Against Hornaby last week, and I think that game kind of told the story for both of us. I mean, it wasn't a bad watch as such. Like, obviously, a bit of a local derby, had that bit of extra edge to it. But yeah, it was two teams that sort of look as though they're going to be struggling this year, I must say. And the thing is with Billingham Town, obviously, that 4 or 5 minutes away, maybe plus added time from getting promoted back into Division 1 at the first attempt, but then it slipped away from them in the last few minutes of that playoff final and on penalties. And I think, like, the following season after you've lost a playoff final is always a bit of a funny one. Like, some teams, some teams just go all out, and it's pretty tough to stop them, and then they go on and win the league. But some teams, like, it's just that much of a blow.
Mentally, isn't it?
It can be really tough for them to recover, and I think that's maybe what's happening at Billingham Town. I think they will push on up a little bit, but I just think at the minute I am sort of reading comments after they've lost to this team and that team. I think they sort of lost 5-0 in the FA Vars at the weekend as well, didn't they? So it is really tough times for them at the minute.
Yeah, and the bottom three at the moment, sitting 20th, Eschwinen, only winning one game. I mean, starting with them, obviously, I can imagine, obviously, Eschwinen, it's no budget, if any, down there. They'll keep fighting away. Obviously, local lads playing for them, but I think that quality again will show, and I think they will be down in and around that place. 21st, which we have Chesley Street United. Haven't won a game yet, but again, obviously, and I know a few of the lads very well after, obviously, youth ground sharing around the hub last season, speaking to Jason and a few of the lads down there, and I know they'll be disappointed, but I think because the way they're set up, it obviously has to be the young lads that's playing a part of the development of the academy programme that they have. But I think both of us know in the Northern Leagues, you need that experience in your sides at times, and it will show if you have one or two experienced players that's been there, done the job. When you're putting out a young side week in, week out, and they're getting beat again mentally up there, it's going to be hard for them young lads as well. And sitting 22nd, Washington, again hasn't won a game, and it was quite a shame because at the end of last season when they had all them games, the catch-up games, there was a few good results, and they did start to climb a little bit away from the bottom. And I think them three sides down there, if things don't pick up, they're going to be looking around that place come the end of the season, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think those sides that you mentioned have been. Some might argue among those that have been maybe getting away with it for quite a few years now. Like think I know Eshwinen were like season before last but I know they were liable for relegation. I think everyone thought that they were going to go down with Durham City, but I think they obviously managed to get away with it. And it's the same with Washington, really. Like they've been sort of strugglers for the last couple of years. Like I maybe thought that once they got the new ground sorted, that that might sort of help them kick on a little bit. But I just think, yeah, they are struggling at the minute, and I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if, like, come the end of the season, they maybe haven't got the necessary points per games to be able to stay up. And Chester Street United is a bit of a funny one. Obviously, last season they obviously had to move to the hub, and obviously they've got the new place sorted for this season. I need to get there at some point because I've not been yet. Same with Washington, actually. But yeah, it's a funny one, I think. But then again, like I think you always find with the teams near the bottom of Division 2, we might be going into the last 10, 15 games of the season or something like that, and you're thinking, oh, they've only got like one win or two win or two, 3 wins or something like that. And it's like how are they going to turn this around? But then almost out of nowhere, they sort of seem to do it. Like, I think you always get a lot of teams that will maybe get to that stage of the season and they've got just about nothing left to play for, which kind of helps those teams when it comes to facing them. So it's going to be an interesting one, but obviously, again, once the final whistle blows on the final day of the season, like they're not going to know what their fate is, whether they're going to be staying in the Northern League, if they're going to be dropping to the Wearside League, the Alliance, to the North Riding League, whichever part of the Northeast that they're from. So I think that side of it's got to be really frustrating, and I think that's maybe part of the reason why that these teams are struggling so much because of that uncertainty that they have going into the summer. Like they don't know if they need to build for the Northern League or for Step 7. Like it's just it can always be a really confused time, and I think maybe they do find themselves sort of playing catch up eventually, like against the sides that will also go into summer knowing, right, we're going to be in Division 1 next season, we're going to be in Division 2 next season.
No, 100%. And hopefully, like you say, both obviously Chester Street and Washington sitting on like not even a win yet. As them weeks go on, it's very important just to get that first win on board. Otherwise, it will be in a massive rough for them clubs. And like you say there, Dan, you mentioned a couple of teams, obviously Durham City that you just mentioned there, like Wilton that went down. I know they're kind of struggling already in the Wearside League, and there's some good sides now coming through the Wearside League, lots of local sides as well. If you follow that Northern League now, it's very tough to get a team to get back into that division, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think as well, there's just such a bottleneck of teams across those 3 divisions that are wanting to push on into the Northern League. Like the other week, I went down to Grangetown Boys Club. They're definitely building something that's eventually going to be fit for Northern League. I've installed a little stand. They've got the floodlights now, and they're putting paving around the pitch. But obviously, I think this year it might just come down to maybe just not having the quality on the pitch. Like, so obviously, you can sort of build what you want, but you still got to do the sporting merit side of it as well. But yeah, I think as well, like as we mentioned earlier, like finance does play a pretty astronomical part in all of this, and I think right now there's probably teams across those 3 divisions that are probably financially better off than some of the teams at the lower end of Northern League Division 2, and I think that maybe shows when like these sides, when they come up against these sides in the county cups, like you might see I don't know, like Leam Rangers beat like Leeds Rangers beat Washington or something like that. I think that's a bit of a shock
Yeah.
result, but really, is it really a shock result?
Yeah, no, 100%. But no, Dan, thank you very much for coming on the chat tonight. Hopefully, like you say, in a couple of months' time, I would imagine the positions are going to change as the next few weeks go on as well. And hopefully, catch you out with a game as well, also over the next kind of month or so as well. But thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy your travels as well, Dan.
Yeah, it's been great to be on as always. Cheers.
Excellent. But again, everyone, thank you so much for watching tonight. We always appreciate your support as always. And like I say, get out as many games as you can. Keep supporting them local sides and getting through the gates as well. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your night as well.